Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, dear sisters and brothers. Welcome to Iman Live from Kirkland, Washington on this hot summer day and on this the eve of the 4th of Muharram. We begin our program here with the recitation of the Holy Quran.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أفغير الله تأمروني أعبد أيها الجاهلون ولقد أوحي إليك وإلى الذين من قبلك لئن أشركت ليحبطن عملك ولتكونن من الخاسرين بل الله فاعبد وكن من الشاكرين وما قدروا الله حق قدره والأرض جميعا قبضته يوم القيامة والسماوات مطويات بيمينه سبحانه وتعالى عما يشركون ونفخ في الصور فصعق من في السماوات ومن في الأرض إلا من شاء الله ثم نفخ فيه أخرى فإذا هم قيام ينظرون وأشرقت الأرض بنور ربها ووضع الكتاب وجيء بالنبيين والشهداء وقضي بينهم بالحق وهم لا يظلمون ووفيت كل نفس ما عملت وهو أعلم بما يفعلون صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Az-Zumar, verses 64 to 70. In the name of God, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy. Say, do you order me to worship someone other than God, you foolish people? It has already been revealed to you, Prophet, and to those before you. If you ascribe any partner to God, all your work will come to nothing. You will be one of the losers. No, worship God alone, and be of those who are grateful to Him. These people have no grasp of God's true measure. On the day of resurrection, the whole earth will be in His grip. The heavens will be rolled up in His right hand. Glory be to Him. He is far above the partners they ascribe to Him. The trumpet will be sounded, and everyone in the heavens and the earth will fall down senseless, except those God spares. It will be sounded once again, and they will be on their feet looking on. The earth will shine with the light of its Lord. The record of deeds will be laid open. The prophets and the witnesses will be brought in. Fair judgment will be given between them. They will not be wronged. And every soul will be repaid in full for what it has done. He knows best what they do. Sadaqallahu al-Aliyyul.
Sisters and brothers, a couple of quick announcements before we continue our program this evening. Tonight is Thursday, the eve of Friday, so we will have an extended program whereby we will follow the Salatul Maghribain with Dua Kumail and Riyat Warith. So it'll be a little longer program than every night. Also, the things we've got lined up today is going to run a little longer, so our Maghrib time may be a few minutes past the actual time of Maghrib. I hope that's okay with everybody. But we just want to make sure we fit everything in. So with this, let me now introduce the continuation of the Shia of Islam history produced by Ahlul Bayt TV. Again, our gratitude to them for producing this beautiful video that was highly educational and inspirational. Let us begin this with loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
The Shia Muslim community of Dearborn started before year 1900. There were some individuals who traveled from the Middle East, from Lebanon, coming to Michigan, to Detroit area and Dearborn area, searching for work. Some of them arrived as early as 1875.
My grandfather came in 1885, which is why the family's been here over 135 years. And they came for economic opportunity, but then they also wanted their children to be born here in the United States and have that opportunity to have citizenship in this country. So our grandmothers would make the long haul. The kids would be delivered here in the Detroit area, and then they would be raised back in Lebanon, and when they were teenagers, they would come back, being fully American citizens, and also to get education.
Ford Motor Company started offering $5 a day. So a lot of the Arabs who were living in Michigan City moved to Dearborn, Michigan, and worked at the Ford Motor Company. They would leave the foundry and they would be covered with dirt, and all of the men would come home, take a bath, get dressed up in their suit, put a white shirt on, put a tie, and they would go on Dix Avenue. And all the men would congregate outside of the coffee houses and the other businesses and trade stories.
He was a cowboy out in the West trying to make money and work on the railroad. And then when Ford Motor Company was paying $5 a day, which was, I guess, big money back then he started working at Ford Motor Company.
When they moved to Detroit and the Depression started, she would tell us stories about how that affected their life. She would shop and start saving sugar, flour, butter, whatever. And then when the Depression started, and there wasn't much of that, everything was rationed, I think. Alhamdulillah. She had a lot, I gotta tell you, whenever I think of my mother and how hard she worked, it breaks my heart.
Like everybody else, my grandfather, great man, he was a sheep herder in Vintage Bel, Lebanon, and he came to this country looking for a future. We had the automotive company, Henry Ford, that was starting out their business here, and that's where people were coming to get jobs. And so he came in the early 1900s, and my dad was born, Haji Muhammad Turfi, he was born in 1931, and he was born here. About probably in 1932, 33, they all moved back to Lebanon. My father did come back, and he had some resistance. My grandparents did not want him to come. And so he got up on, they had a building in Vintage Bel, and he got up on the balcony and he threatened to jump if my grandmother wouldn't let him come. You know, she was the main resistance. And finally they seceded to him, and then he came to this country.
Henry Ford had opened up the big, huge Rouge complex and was employing people literally from all over the world. Arabs, Lebanese mainly, that could get to this part of America found it fairly easy to get a good job at the Ford Motor Company because Henry Ford was paying $5 a day. Back in the late 20s, that was a pretty decent wage. You could support a family, certainly. You could buy a house. You could even afford to buy one of Henry Ford's cars.
During the Depression, they were, again, extremely poor, and they had so many children to feed. And at 12 years of age, my Uncle Mike, my grandfather asked him to send a letter to President Roosevelt because they laid my grandfather off. He had no job and no way to feed his children. So my Uncle Mike, at age 12, wrote a letter to the President of the United States. The President of the United States read it and responded. My grandfather was able to get his job back.
This is from the World War II Memorial, and the Gold Star, the Bronze Star, the Silver Star that my father received for meritorious and heroic action. And it tells you all the places where he was: Normandy, northern France, Ardennes.
When we'd go to bed in the evening, she'd read out of the Quran for us, everything about the Hassan, the Hussein, Muhammad. People from the neighborhood would come and she'd teach them about the Quran, and she'd make fields out of the Quran. And actually, it wasn't a lot of people, but it was a small community, and they were all close, and they were all very religious.
The Arabs in South Dearborn were kind of looked upon, and a lot of people don't like me to say this, but it was kind of looked upon like the blacks are looked on in many communities. I can remember my brother telling me that something was stolen in high school, and the only lockers they opened up was the Arabic kids' lockers, and they never stole anything. We never locked the door in South Dearborn. Nobody ever stole from each other. It had a reputation for being a rough neighborhood because we all stuck together. If someone was bothering you, all you had to do is say, look, I'm from South Dearborn, and they say, I'm sorry for bothering you, because they all stuck together.
They were always preaching religion. We always used to go to Sunday school on Sunday, although Friday was our Friday prayers, but because people worked and stuff like that, we conducted that services on Sunday as well.
Well, they all covered their hair, even the Catholics, which they were. The Ukrainians were Orthodox, the Spaniards were Catholics, and my great-grandmother was a Muslim, and they all covered their hair. It was hard to tell who was who.
That was a very, very interesting time because every neighbor was like a parent to you. You could knock on any door. You were safe. The kids played safely in the parks.
Lila, Yvonne, Andre, Faye, Jerry, Wanda, and David. I asked my dad, I says, Dad, why? And all our middle names are traditional Lebanese names. I asked him, well, he says, you know, Dad, I didn't want you guys to have the same problems and trials and tribulations as I did as my name, because his name was Muhammad.
The early travelers or the early immigrants, they were more culturally inclined, I would say, rather than Islamically inclined. But then there were a few who were kind of, I would say, the seeds, those who rooted this community. And they would hold things in their homes. They began to hold Friday prayer in their homes and you know, began to help one another out and to be able to galvanize an Islamic identity.
The early Shia who migrated to this country, they might have been practicing Muslims themselves, but over years and over lack of religious leadership and religious guidance, their Islamic identity was deteriorating and fading away, basically. And their children and their grandchildren were being raised in an environment where there was hardly any religious upbringing and any religious teachings. They basically had their identity dissolved in this country. Many of them converted to Christianity. Some of them did not technically convert to Christianity, but their religious identity was completely diluted. Their only connection to Islam was probably the two Eid, Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. Not even Ashura, not even the month of Ramadan itself. I believe this is something inevitable that would happen when there is no enough religious guidance.
But what was beginning to happen is when the early immigrants came, they adopted Christian ways and Christian identities in order to understand their Islam. So our funerals had a Christian-like style. Our wedding ceremonies had a Christian-like style. And that's because the first generation of American-born Lebanese Shias were starting to be, in their 18, 19, 20s. They brought the Christian traditions into our mosques. The idea of passing a basket doesn't probably happen in many places in any Islamic country, but it was happening in our community and became almost an iconic thing to pass the basket. Well, where'd that come from? That came from the church. Funerals. Caskets were open, not closed. Coffins were not closed. They were open. There was 3-day, 4-day funerals so that people could come and have these rituals that Christians had. So we kind of went through this evolution of Islamic identity, and it wasn't until I was well into my 30s, I remember exactly, probably about 36, before I really myself understood the core Shia identity.
A pious sheikh with limited Islamic education, but with extreme devotion and piety. His name is Sheikh Khalil Bazzi. Sheikh Khalil Bazzi served in Detroit metro community in the early 1920 and 1930. And in fact, at that time, he was the only religious figure living among the Muslim community. The man would not charge any fees for any of the services he would offer. When a few members of the community wanted to honor this man, they went and they bought him a new car. And the man refused. When he came home and his wife told him about the new car, he told his wife that she needed to call those people who brought the car, otherwise he would divorce her. And she had to call those donors and ask them to come and take the car back. Sheikh Khalil Bazzi also had wikala, representation from a few maraja of the time, such as Ayatullah Sayyid al-Hakim and other Grand Ayatollahs in Najaf.
He worked a vegetable and fruit truck that he drove around into neighborhoods, and he did that during the day. And then when there was a funeral or a religious service or a marriage, including my own, he would put his cloak on and he would put his turban on and he would become the imam.
The community decided to basically gather at a place where they can basically meet on weekly basis, have some religious event celebrated, and so on and so forth. They chose a place known as the Hashemite Hall.
Hashmi Society was a building on the corner of Dix Avenue and Salina. It was originally a bank. The Hashmi Society were a group of Shia Muslim men who got together and bought the building. Initially, they bought it to rent it out as a hall. Weddings were performed there, funerals were performed there.
It was just a big hall, but downstairs they used it for events, whether it was a wedding, a dinner, and upstairs was Sunday school. It was packed with all the people from the neighborhood.
That's where the religion sprouted from. It wasn't immaculate. It was just like a little hall, but people went there to practice their faith. If you didn't have that place, who knows where we would have been. So it was their meeting place. It was their salvation. It was their meditation place. It was a place to meet the rest of the Muslims. It gave people a sense of pride as well too, and allowed them to practice their faith so they didn't lose their faith.
I used to go to the Hajmi Hall also for Sunday school and to learn Arabic, because my mother was American. She was from Ada, Oklahoma. So every Sunday we would go to Sunday school, and every Sunday I would learn Aleph, Bet, Tet, Thet, Jim, Hada, and my Arabic isn't that good, but I still remember from when I was 5 years old learning that.
It was a family. We knew everyone. The women would work. They'd get up at like 3, 4 in the morning to come to the mosque to make bahat, to make the bread, to make the cookies, the kahak. So the women were extremely cohesive. At one time, my aunt was the president of the Women's Club. In my early adulthood, I had to make a decision, I felt, thinking in my mind, having a psychological dilemma. Am I Muslim? I know I'm Muslim. Am I Arab? Yeah, Arab descent. Am I American? Yeah, you're born in America. Your parents and grandparents, all citizens. Well, what am I really? And so then I made the decision I could choose. I didn't have to give up one. I could choose the best of each of these, and that's what I did.
People didn't even know where the Middle East was back then. People didn't even know what is Islam. They would ask, what is Islam? Where is the Middle East? How do you worship? What do you do?
We had the riots in 1969. I started getting acclimated to discrimination, so understanding it. Like, I didn't really understand it. Because you're black, that means you should be discriminated against. We never understood that. And so, but then I started understanding it as an Arab, as an Arab American Arab. I started understanding how when my mother would wear the hijab and people would look at her funny, and I never could understand it. She was just as American as anybody else.
We as Arabs ran into problems because we were Arabs, certainly. We didn't blend in as easily as the other kids that came from the South End who were Christians and white. So yeah, we were called the names, camel jockey, sand, ends, and so on and so forth.
Vietnam is the scene of a powerful aggression that is spurred by an appetite for conquest. It is the arena where communist expansionism is most aggressively at work in the world today.
I actually got drafted. That was during the Vietnam War. They asked me what my religion was. I told them Islam. The guy had never heard of it that was doing it, so he put down none. I got sent to Vietnam in 1967. I was in a helicopter gunship platoon, it's called. I was a door gunner, which means you kind of just sit in the door of a helicopter and people shoot at you, and you shoot back at them. I did that for about 9 months. When I left, my mom gave me a small Quran to wear. I never took it off the whole time I was there. And many is the time I ended up in a foxhole when we were being mortared or they were shooting at us, praying to Allah to keep me from harm. And my prayers were answered. Seeing the injustice that I saw there in Vietnam changed my outlook about humanity. I saw how we mistreated people, unreasonably so. I was just a very, very small cog in the wheel there, without any influence, and couldn't really say anything, but
the longer you're here, the more you're able to claim an identity. That's just one of the things that freedom of religion allows you to do in this country. So as they had fallouts over ideological or theological issues, we began to see the splinter into the community, which then gave birth to the religious identity and mosques of Shia Islam that we see today.
There were some sectarian divisions among the early immigrants that led to the basically movement to be split up. That was the first move for many to think on the long term for having a permanent place, and that was a dream that was realized afterward under the shape of the Islamic Center of Detroit, or Islamic Center of America.
The Muslim families, they were trying to save money to get a piece of land and build a mosque. So each family donated $5. That's how poor they were. They could only afford $5. One man put a lien on his home so they could build a mosque. So that mosque still stands, the building stands. And that was called the Islamic Center of America.
My father and all the aforementioned individuals and other individuals, they mortgaged their homes to buy some land on Joy Road in Detroit. And they purchased this property, the Islamic Center of Detroit, as it originally was called.
People were struggling, you know, they worked hard. So as our gift to the mosque, we painted the whole mosque. It was a big job.
Sheikh Muhammad Jawad Shirri was a well-educated cleric who studied and graduated from the Najaf Seminary. And through his dedication and his tireless efforts, he was able to mobilize the community so they can have their own first mosque and center. He solicited some help from abroad, mainly from Egypt, from the Egyptian President Jamal Abdel Nasser. Jamal Abdel Nasser, who was aspiring to be a nationalistic leader for all Arabs, was probably thinking at that time to unify Shia and Sunni Arabs under one banner, under the Pan-Arabism. Upon meeting Imam Sheikh Muhammad Jawad Shirri in Cairo, he decided to donate toward the very first Shia center in Detroit. He did actually donate around $80,000.
From there, the real journey of Shia Islam in America started, from the Islamic Center of America, which is considered the mother center of most of the Islamic centers, Shia Islamic centers, and also I can say maybe this is one of the most important Islamic centers, whether it is Shias or Sunnis.
With the blessings of God and their hard work, they sacrificed, honestly, they sacrificed raising their children, they sacrificed their careers, and from there, from the Islamic Center of Detroit, it spread and it founded who we are today.
Just having a facility that was a mosque and a community center together, that had a real prayer room. You can open the doors and go into a domed area. I mean, these symbols of religious identity, they grew in us, and we understood that we counted.
There are so many great men that sacrificed everything for the sake of Islam and for this community. We wouldn't be interviewing right now but for those great men.
Today, the number of Muslims in Detroit is estimated to be around 300,000, from which I can safely say there are at least between 60 to 80,000 Shia Muslims.
Somehow when you get large, you lose the intimacy. And the intimacy was what made all of us cohesive, and we truly loved each other. So, I mean, we still have that love, but we don't know a lot of the people.
Dearborn has an election coming up, and it looks like Dearborn is probably going to elect its first Arab American mayor. I know it's something that my parents would probably never have dreamt that ever would have happened.
We don't propagate from the pulpit, we propagate from the street by opening doors, by saying thank you, by saying hello, by saying goodbye, you know, by doing these little things that don't cost us a penny. That's how you propagate Islam.
Wow, what an inspirational story. What's amazing. You know, we do not propagate from the pulpit, we propagate from the streets by doing small little things. There's a lot to learn. Inshallah, we get a chance to visit Dearborn one of these days and really enrich ourselves with their history, and hopefully we can get inspired and learn from them what we can do here in Seattle. We continue our program this evening now with the marthia chosen for today, Brother Mansoor. Sallu ala Nabi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
Bar Muhammad ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imtihani ashiqi कैफ पाते हैं उसे इम्तिहाने आशिकी में कैफ पाते मुश्किलों में मुस्कुराते हैं उसे लापता इल्ला لا سيف إلا ذوالفقار لا فتى إلا علي لا سيف إلا पढ़ते जाते हैं फरिश्ते बढ़ते जाते हैं उसे इम्तिहाने
کی میں کیف پاتے بر محمد آل محمد صلوات
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد
بر محمد آل محمد صلوات
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد
خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز نہ ہو سکے کبھی جدا حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز خدا سے گفتگو کی ایک حسین ادا نماز ہے وفا بقا ذا شفا عطا دوا نماز ہے امام کے یہ دل سے پوچھئے کہ کیا نماز ہے عزا ہے ایک دعا حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز تھا زخم زخم جسم خون سے وضو کیا ہوا تھی جان نماز تیر کی تھا جس پہ سر رکھا ہوا چلا جو خنجر لئی تو تن سے سر جدا ہوا الگ نہ کوئی کر سکا حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز نماز وہ ہے جو ہمیشہ حمد لا مکاں کرے حسین وہ ہے خون سے جو نماز جاویداں کرے سوال تھا کہ دین کو کوئی مختصر بیان کرے قلم نے صرف لکھ دیا حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز امام پر خدا کا حق جو تھا وہ حق ادا کیا شہادت حسین نے تو موت کو ہرا دیا اصول دین نے فروع دین کو بچا لیا یہ ہے پیام کربلا حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز وہ کرب بے ردائی کا قمر نہ ہو سکے بیاں مصیبتوں کی انتہا میں شکر کر رہی ہے ماں عزا کے فرش پر نماز پڑھ رہی ہے بیبیاں نہ رک سکے گا سلسلہ حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز نہ ہو سکے کبھی جدا حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز خدا کے دین کی بقا حسین اور نماز بر محمد آل محمد صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you, Brother Mansoor, Abashu, and Hamza. Beautiful recitation. We continue our program now with the lecture plan for this evening. And before I welcome Shaykh Arif, I just would like to remind everybody that our program is going to run a little longer tonight. And after the Salat al-Maghribain, we also have the Dua Kumail, tonight being Thursday night, Eve of Friday. So our program will be longer than usual. With this, let us welcome Shaykh Arif with Nara Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين وأصحابه المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى قيام يوم الدين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمسابنا بأبي عبد الله الحسين عليه الصلاة والسلام. So Islam is based on rationality, and it is all about fulfilling the human purpose, and it is sync with the human nature and nature of existence at large. We move from weakness into strength, from potentiality into actuality. Now the revelation progressively reflects human progression and human evolution. As the minds mature, the revelation matures with the minds and causes it a leap in maturity. You cannot give to an undiscerning mind things that they cannot handle. The same is the trend with the revelation. The revelation has to be in sync with the nature of humanity. Now, if we look at the revelations and we study them, we will see that there is a progressive trend. The revelations are all after one thing: complete your human potential, complete your human journey individually and as a collective body. Now, when we look at it this way, then every part of existence contributes meaningfully to the overall growth of the collective. Everything is intertwined. It is one destiny that is blooming, unraveling itself, coming to fruition. Now it is here that we need to examine some of our attitudes and our outlook in line with this and in line with what the revelation is saying. The Quranic message is just one. Throw aside everything that is distracting you from the attainment of your goal. Instead, look at what is at hand. There is a task. Attain your goal. Now, as we go into this talk, and we will be picking up from yesterday, look at the Blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he came to his community, there were barbarians. The time he leaves them, they become a civilization. Within 23 years, he brings about a shift in paradigm. Through what? Through telling them that, look, what has gone has gone. Leave aside your grievances. Put aside the blaming and fault finding. They had vendettas running for years. Islam said, you're all brothers. There is no reproach now. Finish. Everything has gone. Now collectively be together, act as one body, and go forward. And he had such audacity and such confidence. He said, no, I will not place myself as the other, as opposed to a Jew or a Christian. We are one. And his message bears witness to this. Say to the people of the book, come together. I'll be revisiting this theme in just a little while. But that was the attitude of Muhammad Rasulullah. What has plagued you in the past, leave in the past. Start afresh. Islam conceals whatever has gone in the past. Finish. Forgive each other. Aus and Khazraj, forgive each other. Now become one body. كَأَنَّهُمْ بُنْيَانٌ مَرْسُوسٌ. Become one in the obedience of Allah. Then he empowered them. And he gave them growth. He gave them confidence. So in light of this Quranic message, let us now assess the history of humanity very briefly, and then look at our attitudes and address them. So we have this tendency, a very backward tendency, a negative tendency that is inconsistent with the Quran, that I am better than they are, or mine were better than theirs. Now I want to examine this. The Quran sees it very differently, and the human history bears witness to something contrary. We have this, who was the better scientist, the greatest contributor to human intellectual scientific thought? Was it Newton or Einstein? Now this question is false. Had it not been for Newton understanding gravity, Einstein would never have been produced within the folds of humanity. A Newton had to exist prior to Einstein for the thought to progress and prompt thought in such a direction that humanity would produce a genius of the name of Einstein. Had Einstein not existed, Stephen Hawking would not have existed. Can you not see? Both are equally important. They both have their place. You can't compare them against each other. Both of them are pride of humanity. Who was better, the Greeks, the Romans, the Persians, or the Muslims? It's a non-starter. Everyone comes, contributes in their own context, leaves a beautiful heritage for others to come and develop. The Romans pick up from the Greeks, the Persians use the Greeks, the Muslims use the Greeks and Romans and Persians, all of them together, put together, and the Western civilization uses whatever the Muslims have contributed. In this way, you can't say who is better and who is lesser. The secret in understanding is to understand humanity as one collectivity. All of us are contributing uniquely. And at this point in time, we are at such a beautiful and unique juncture of humanity that with communication and global citizenship, we have become one body more so now than we've ever been previously. Cultures are integrating, knowledge is integrating, spirituality is integrating, religion is integrating. Everything has become integrated, and we are becoming like a full collective mind. So this notion of who is better and who is not better is a very false notion. Now if we look at the same thing in relation to messengership and prophethood, we will find that the Quran is silent as to who is the better one and who is the lesser one and who is the greater one. The Quran doesn't understand this logic altogether. It doesn't say Ibrahim was better than Isa, or Isa was better than Musa, or Musa was better than Nuh, or Prophet Muhammad is better than any one of them. Phenomenally, the Quran explains, and there's a reason why I'm setting up this prelude today. The Quran explains, آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله. Indeed, the messenger has brought faith with whatever God has revealed to him, and so have the believers. All of them believe in Allah, His angels, His books, and His messengers. And then the statement comes, we do not distinguish between any one of His messengers. They are all one and the same. All of them have uniquely contributed. To state that if Nuh had not been around, Abraham could never have taken birth as Abraham. To signify that if Hud and Saleh had not been there, Ibrahim would not have come because they preceded Ibrahim. To signify that had Moses not been there, Isa would never have the opportunity to go to a community of Jewish people and address their mindset. Because had Moses not delivered them, Isa would have had no people to work with. Isa would not have taken birth in a Jewish community. He was a Jew by birth. If Isa and Musa and Nuh and Ibrahim had not come already, Prophet Muhammad would not have had any context to work within. And he benefits from the learnings of all of them. Now phenomenally the Quran explains, تِلْكَ الرُّسُلْ فَضَّلْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Those messengers, we gave precedence to some over others. Now here, our naive thinking before completing the verse is what? That some prophets have been given superiority over other prophets. Isn't this the way we think? But if we were to read the verse carefully, we will find no. The prophet, this is not what the Quran is saying. Think about it. تِلْكَ الرُّسُلْ فَضَّلْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Those messengers, we have given priority to some over others. How? Minhum man kallam Allah. From them are those who God spoke with. And that was Musa. God does not speak with anybody with voice other than Musa. And that's why Musa's great merit and distinguishing factor is his Kalimullah. Muhammad Rasulullah is not Kalimullah. It's Musa. That is his merit and his attribute. وَرَفَعَ بَعْضَهُمْ دَرَجَاتٍ. And some he elevated in ranks. This is more than likely Prophet Idris, right? Who was taken to the heavens by the angels. Before Qiyamah, he is in paradise. That is his merit. Is it Prophet Idris or which one? Please correct me if I'm wrong, yeah? There were 124,000 of them, I can't remember all of them. وَآتَيْنَا عِيسَى بْنَ مَرْيَمَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ وَأَيَّدْنَاهُ بِرُوحِ الْقُدُسِ. And we gave Isa, the son of Maryam, the bayyinat, the distinguishing features. And we assisted him with Ruhul Qudus. Allah has assisted one with Ruhul Qudus, the other one he's called Kalim, the third one he's Rafa'a Darajat. These are only the ones that he's talking about here. So God is saying, look, all of them are equal. There are distinguishing features that one has that the other does not have. One is Kalim, the other one is Ruh, the third one is something else, Khalil. All of them have their own merits. Where has the Quran compared any one of them against the other? If there was comparison, the Quran would say it, wouldn't it? That you are the best one. It is us that we said these are ulul azm because they were ashabul risala. They brought in the risala. But does that mean that the Quran is saying one is better than the other? The Quran is resisting from the temptation of holding anyone in superiority to another one. The Quran is saying, look, every one of them had their own merit. So now we can look at Einstein and Newton in the case of the prophets. One contributed uniquely in his own context. The other one contributed uniquely in his own context. Now, there is no yardstick to determine who is better. I just need to drive home this point a bit more. Now if you look at the story of Musa and Khidr. Now Musa is ulul azm. But in front of Khidr, he is like a little child, a student. And Khidr is taunting him. Read those verses. Yes? And he made the servant to whom we gave from ourselves knowledge. Ataynahu min ladunna ilma. Who we gave from ourselves knowledge. Now Moses, with his greatness, he's parting the seas and throwing the staff and taking the hand out and wow, can anybody do this? He comes to Khidr. Khidr says, Moses, you can't really learn from me. You just don't have the patience. Your psychological makeup is not such that you can have. Isn't this offensive? Isn't this offensive? In any case, Moses wants to follow Khidr. Khidr said, see, I told you you can't do it. He said, well, I forgot, forgive me. Who is better? Khidr is better in his own way and Moses is better in his own way. Khidr could never have delivered the Israelites, he just does not have the personality to do so. Moses just does not have the patience to understand the type of knowledge that Khidr is receiving. Both of them in their own place are supreme brand. How can you say one is better than the other? Can you not see this? So then we come to Nabi Isa salamullah alayhi and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Who is better in terms of these type of preferential factors? Isa, I mean, look at the man. He's amazing. He speaks inside his cradle. Has anybody spoken inside his cradle? I mean, with words that make sense. I don't want somebody to say my baby spoke yesterday or whatever. With proper speech. You're not in the mood for light humor today, are you, Salawat? Did any prophet speak in the cradle? Okay, no, the Prophet Muhammad did not speak inside the cradle. Okay, fine. All right. Fine. Isa breathes life into the dead bodies. Did Muhammad Rasulullah do this? No, he didn't. Isa fashioned a bird and blew into it and it became a bird. Did Muhammad Rasulullah do this? Did Nuh do this? Did Ibrahim do this? Did anybody do this? Nobody has done this. Isa cures the blind and the lepers. The Prophet Muhammad did not do any of these things. Who is better, Isa or Prophet Muhammad? Prophet Muhammad comes and changes human history, leaves his indelible mark, and all within 23 years. Has anybody done this? Muhammad Rasulullah moves people away from miracles and empowers them and gives them the reins of their destiny in their own hands and says there are no more prophets after me. Your rationality, your sense of godliness will drive human history forward now. Has anybody graduated the human community more than Muhammad Rasulullah? No. So we cannot compare. This notion of comparison is wrong. Now I want to go a step further. Because you see, we have this notion, and I'm building towards something today, and it will continue for the next few days. We have this notion that our superheroes are the best, better than anyone else. They have to be the most pious. They have to be the most learned. They have to have the best quality that anybody else has. So if Isa speaks inside the cradle, then Imam Ali will speak inside the Kaaba. Are you seeing this? If Isa can resurrect the dead, then Imam Ali can cut heads off and join them back on. Are you seeing where we're going with this? If Moses splits the river or the Nile, Muhammad Rasulullah will split the whole moon in two. Are you seeing this? This is the tendency that we have. I want to go a stage further here. What is there to say that mere mortals could not have had qualities that the prophets did not have? Think about it. Is it possible that somebody can be more handsome than the Prophet himself? Why not? Why not? Especially when the Prophet becomes a little bit older and a youthful young man who is more handsome than the Prophet is there. Isn't that possible? Hazrat Ali Akbar Salamullah Alayhi was more handsome than Imam Hussain Salamullah Alayhi, wasn't he? Does that undermine Imam Hussain? Is it possible that somebody can be more eloquent than the Prophet? We have a hadith that the Prophet said, I speak in prose and short words. My brother Ali has been blessed with eloquence. And he speaks eloquently. Is there a problem in that? Is it possible that a mere mortal may have more knowledge than a prophet in a given field of expertise? In irrigation and farming? In crafting, in craft and pottery? Is it possible? Why shouldn't it be possible? So the first thing is that this notion in our heads is a wrong notion, that a prophet has to be better than anybody else, and my prophet has to be better than every prophet that has gone before him. Okay, fine, then prove it from the Quran. The Quran says otherwise. The Quran says Moses spoke. God spoke with Moses. It did not happen with any other prophet. The Quran says Isa breathed life into the dead bodies. No other prophet has done this. The Quran is refusing from this tendency of distracting the minds. The Quran is just saying one thing: you do not be distracted by the superiority complex. You listen to the message, reason with it, flow with it, bring about the best in your own humanity, and bring about a collective body that I can take pride in as my Khalifa on the face of this earth. That is your sole task. Your task is not to be distracted who is better and who is not better. Your task is singular. Leave the prophets behind as far as their miracles are concerned. Follow the prophet as far as their example is concerned. Follow the prophet as far as their message is concerned. Bring about the fullness of your godly light. That is your purpose, not to be distracted in veneration of human beings or of prophets or of angels or of jinn. Read the Quran. It is very adamant about this message, that you have gone away from what the central message was. The Quran only gives one sense of greatness and lesserness, I suppose superiority, in one way only, and that is the scope and the breadth of the message. It says to Abraham, Inni ja'aluka linnasi imama. I make you an imam for mankind. And we'll have some debates on imama tomorrow. I make you an imam for mankind. He does not say that to the Prophet Muhammad. He says that to Ibrahim. Now, reflect upon this verse. Inni ja'aluka linnasi imama. Today, the 3, 4 or 5 Abrahamic faiths are all stemming from Ibrahim. Is he not an imam for mankind? The followers of Islam follow Prophet Muhammad. The followers of Christianity follow Isa salamullah alayhi. The followers of Judaism follow Hazrat Musa salamullah alayhi. But all 3 collectively follow Ibrahim. Indirectly, don't they? They're all Abrahamic. And if you were to admit the Zoroastrians and the Sabians, then you got 2 more. And if you were to say the Hindus with their understanding of Brahma and Saraswati, who might be Abraham and Sarah, then even the Hindus are following Ibrahim. And if the Hindus are following Ibrahim, then the Buddhists and the Jains and everybody is following Ibrahim. So there you go, the verse of the Quran, Inni ja'iluka linnasi imama. And there is no greater imam than Ibrahim. You have to admit that any prophet that comes from the lineage of Ibrahim through Ishaq or Ismail, nobody reaches the breadth and the scope of Ibrahim. Then again, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We have not sent you save as a mercy for the whole of humanity. إِلَّا لَكَافَةِ النَّاسِ بَشِيرًا وَنَذِيرًا. We have sent you for the entirety of humankind to Prophet Muhammad. So in that way, Prophet Muhammad's scope and his message is all embracing. لِيُظْهِرُ دِينَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّ. In order for the deen of Muhammad that you are delivering, for it to prevail over deen in its entirety. Yes, you can have preference here. In this way, you can have a superiority claim. But that superiority claim is not a superiority claim on the basis of an individual who is better and who is lesser. For all of them are equally contributing in their own context. لا نفرق بين أحد من رسلي. We do not distinguish between any one of them at all. Right, now, the only other 2 places that have got a lot of preference in the Quran is Kaaba and Masjid Aqsa. Allah mentions Kaaba 4 times in the Quran as a place of amnesty for mankind and a house for mankind. In fact, the Kaaba has been called the house of mankind more than it's been called the house of God. So Kaaba has that preference. Masjid Aqsa has that preference. Asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-haram ila al-masjid al-aqsa. These are mentioned in the Quran. So we can say, yeah, they have preference because some existential properties are there. Inna awwala baytin wudi'a lin-nas lalladhi bi Makkah. The first house made for mankind is the one in Makkah or Makkah. So these are the places that are existentially very, very important. Now, Quran does not want us to be distracted by these things. One more thing that comes in the Quran is kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas. You are the best of nation that has been produced for mankind. And that again, the best sense comes for the Muslims. Why? Because they are taking the lock, stock and barrel of the prophetic trend and messages together. Because the Prophet said to the Jews and the Christians, I believe in everything revealed unto you, as I believe in everything revealed unto me. So I'm not excluding anything. And of course it stands to reason that a community that believes in all the goodness that has come from God has to be the best community in that way potentially. Now we ask the Quran, is there any criterion by which we can understand who is the best? The Quran gives a hidden criterion. إِنَّمَا أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. The best of you with God is the one who is most God conscious. That's it. How do you know? Well, it's sealed within the heart. Only God knows how phenomenally God is doing things. If you want to know who's the best, it's the one who is most God conscious. How do I know? Who is? You won't know, only I will know, Allah says. Right? So He has concealed that altogether. Of course, we can see the people who are God conscious, but we can't determine who is more and who is less. Can you see that? So that door is shut. We can't see it. So God wanted to conceal us from all of these distractions as in totality, for us to pursue our life's purpose through reason and attainment of the fullness of our potential, through culminating in godliness, and through scientific exploration and benefiting humankind. Now, on the back of that, now I want to discuss something. You've heard it all. You will find ahadith, innumerable ahadith, that compare the ziyarah of Imam Hussain Salamullah alayh with Hajj and Umrah. Now, look at these ahadith. If you go for ziyarah of Imam Hussain, you get the thawab of Hajj and Umrah. Fine. Had it stopped there, we would have said that's fine. Then you get a hadith, for every step that you take for the ziyarah of Imam Hussain, you get the thawab of 1 Hajj and 1 Umrah. Then you get a hadith that for every step you take, you get 1,000 rewards of Hajj and Umrah that have been done successfully in the presence of the Prophet. And you get the thawab of fighting jihad alongside the Prophet of Allah. Where does this come from? Do you think the 6th Imam could commit himself to a hadith like this? Or the 5th Imam? Think about this comparison that is happening. Then you have this hadith that on the day of Arafah, there is a hadith, right? And we are told, don't doubt this hadith, that Allah forgives everybody on the plains of Arafah. It's a promise of God. Our Imams have told us, and so on and so forth. In contrast with that, you have a hadith that no, prior to looking at the people assembled within Arafah, God looks at the people within the shrine of Imam Hussain and forgives them first, and then forgives the people on the plains of Arafah. You've heard that, right? And then we ask, well, why? Why? He says, because at Arafah, now just listen to these reasons, yes? Because at Arafah you can have people who are legitimate of birth and people who are illegitimate of birth. But at the shrine of Imam Hussain, none can enter on that day, only the people who are legitimate of birth. So now people will be flocking to the shrine of Imam Hussain, oh, thank God I'm legitimate of birth. And you have to ask them, well, whose fatwa are you following? It might be tomorrow. The day of Arafah might be tomorrow. Ask them. So you have to come back tomorrow, and if you don't come back tomorrow, you still don't know if you're legitimate of birth. Sorry for this. I'm so sorry, but I'm talking about the senselessness of it all. And then you have the hadith comparing still Imam Hussain and Karbala. And I believe I read it in Sheikh Abbas Kumi's Mafati, that Karbala was created prior to the land of Kaaba. And Kaaba was told, Makkah was told, had it not been for Karbala, I would not have created you. So forever remain indebted to Karbala. What's the need for these comparisons? Or we have the hadith that under the golden pipe, when you pray to God, He accepts prayers. But if those prayers are not good for you, He will refuse you. But if you go to the Rawaq of Imam Hussain Salamullah alayh, and if you pray there, then even if the prayer is bad for you, God will first change His decree and destiny, make it good for you, and then grant you a prayer. Now the thing is, Imam Hussain is Imam Hussain. Why are we devaluing Imam Hussain like this? My God. Imam Hussain is the Lord of our hearts. But why compare Hajj with Ziyarah of Imam Hussain? It is letting the whole madhab of Ahlul Bayt down. Because when others look at it, they're saying, what sort of people are these? This is Hajj. This is Kaaba, the one that God talks about in the Quran. Imam Hussain went and gave his blood in order to save Salah, Hajj and Kaaba. Imam Hussain gave himself away for these things. It is letting us down, it is letting the Imams down, it is letting the whole faith down. So here we go. Imam Hussain Salamullah alayhi has been given preference over Hajj, over Kaaba, over Umrah, and then over Salah as well. So we know all these things. I don't want to take us too much into this. Now, then we have the debate, who is better, the prophets or the Imams? Are the Imams better or are the prophets better? So we have all of this theology within Shia. There are 3 or 4 views. One view is the prophets are better than the Imams. One view is only the Ulul Azam prophets are better than the Imams. One view is the Imams are better than all of the prophets, barring the last prophet, given their Ulul Azam and everybody else. What I'm saying here is, and then we engage into polemical discussions and to discuss who is better, the Prophet or the Imam, and then we talk about it all. But you can see where all of this is coming from. So if Isa could do this, then our Imam can order a painting of the lion and it will become a lion. Why should our Imam be any less than Isa? Can you see this? Imams are then given super qualities to justify these theologies. So now we have this narration, and I'm very fond of it, and I've always been very fond of these things, but I want to clarify a few things. That Imam is asked on his deathbed, Imam Ali, are you better or Adam? He said, well, I am better than Adam because Adam was told not to eat a particular fruit or a particular seed or a food. He ate it, wheat. I am allowed to eat it, yet I have never consumed wheat. I've always eaten barley. Now, obviously, nobody can prove that Imam Ali Salamullah Ali never ate wheat. Yes, we don't know, right? But is there a criterion for seeing who is better and who is lesser? That not eating wheat and eating barley, is there any criterion? And similarly, the comparison is made between him and Nuh, between him and Nabi Ibrahim, between him and Nabi Musa, between him and Nabi Isa. So you can see how skewed up the brains have become. From the message of God to veneration of personalities. How far we have drifted. So the Sunnis are no better. Actually, they've done the same thing. Now, I've heard some of the most enlightened speakers of the Sunnis, our Sunni brothers, talk about this, and this our aqidah is that Abu Bakr is better than all of the Sahaba. Then it is Umar, then it is Uthman, then it is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Why? In the sequence of their Khilafah. Yeah? They say this. So then another Sunni scholar has responded to him. He said, then in that case, Adam should be better than Muhammad Rasulullah. Because Adam is the first prophet. Can you see the feeble nature of it all? Then the Sunnis say, some of them, that Khalifa Abu Bakr is better than Imam Ali because he is the one who led the prayers in the absence of the Prophet. So then the Sunnis themselves counter it and they say, well, why didn't anybody give this argument in Saqifa when they couldn't choose the Khalifa, that Abu Bakr is the best one? They're all feeble, fanciful ideas. They are all distracting us from the central message. So now what does the Quran say? How do you remedy this? The Quran says 2 things. Leave it in the past. Forget all this historical tension. So it's talking to us, this Shia Sunni tension that you have, Sunni Salafi, Sunni Shia, Shia Sufi, Ismaili Ishnashri, all these tensions that you have. The Quran is saying, put a lid on it from now. Believe in the minimal, in one God and His Messenger, and go forward now. How? تلك أمة قد خلت لها ما كسبت ولكم ما كسبتم ولا تسألون عما كانوا يعملون. That nation that has just gone, they have the responsibility of what they have done. You have the responsibility of what you are doing. You will not be asked for what they have done. Put a seal on it and move on. That's what the Quran is saying. Put a lid on it. It's driving you to your deaths. It's tearing you apart. 2 billion Muslims and they can't do one Eid. They kill each other. This is the state the Quran is saying. Put it in the past. Now start afresh. That's the first approach of the Quran. And the process of starting afresh is, tell the people of the book, come to us on the worship of one God, and that we will not associate with Him. Finish. Tell the Sunnis and the Shias and the Barelwis and the Deobandis and the Salafis and whoever we are, come on the worship of one God. We will not associate with God, and we will not listen to our ulama who are spewing a divisive theology. Leave it in the past. That's the first solution the Quran gives. The second solution the Quran gives is, clarify the past if it is so infectious. If it is plaguing you, then clarify it on the basis of knowledge. So it's constantly saying to the people of the book, revert to your scriptures. Go back to your scriptures and clarify it so you find clarity. Now, in terms of the things that are driving the Muslims apart, of course, in addition to the battles of Jamal, Siffin, these were the two major battles that have messed us up totally. There are issues that have gone before them that are far more divisive and devastating. These are the issues of the Muslims, prominent events nearing the time of the demise of the Prophet and immediately after the demise of the Prophet. These are Ghadir, Qirtas, the last will of the Prophet, Saqifa, Fadak, and the door of Bibi Fatima. Now I want to take a quick look at this based on knowledge, and the reason I'm going to leave the details aside is because we have discussed these all in our SIMS discussions, the Center of Intra-Muslim Studies. So I urge us all to go and look at these discussions where fine Shia and Sunni scholars have come together and they've discussed this issue. As far as Ghadir is concerned, the Prophet Muhammad, on his return from his first and final pilgrimage, just sometime before his death, he tells everybody to stop at a place known as Ghadir Khum. He assembles everybody and then he gives a sermon and he said, I have given you everything that you require and my time has approached. Sahaba were crying. At the peak of this sermon, Sunni Shia except, he said, am I not someone who enjoys priority over you than you yourself? The verse says, the Nabi is awla bil mu'minina min anfusihim. The Nabi has priority over the souls of the believers than the believers themselves. They said, yes, Ya Rasulullah, you are. You have a priority over us. He said, and in that case, he uses the same word. He uses a different form, yes, of that same word, awla, as in mawla. He said, whoever takes me as his master should know that Ali is his master. Or whoever takes me, according to the Sunni brothers, as my friend, Ali is his friend. What happened subsequent to that is that a tent was pitched and everybody went inside there and congratulated Imam Ali. Are you congratulating Imam Ali for becoming the friend of the Prophet? You all know he's already the friend of the Prophet anyway. Obviously, it stands to reason that you don't stop a whole congregation of Muslims that have come from the four corners of Arabia to tell them that Ali is my friend. Even though they hated Imam Ali, and he wanted to clarify that. And then they don't go and congratulate Imam Ali. This is a Sunni Shia ahadith. Obviously, it is more than a friend. That look, this man is the one who can guide you upon a godly path. And that is why you've gone and shaken hands with him and congratulated him. And Hazrat Abu Bakr and Hazrat Umar said, Sirta, you have become our Mawla and the Mawla of the believers. And the fact that Bibi Zainab, Bibi Fatima would be adamant and ask Imam Ali to go to the doors of the Ansar and Muhajirin and remind them about the pledge that they made at Ghadir shows that it wasn't a pledge of friendship. The Prophet was telling them, look, this is my choice. This is my choice. In a semi-democratic fashion, he took the right for Ali. And he said, look, choose him after me. He is the one who can guide you aright. So we know here that our Sunni brothers have really not admitted to what the truth was. What I want to say here is, let us clarify it, all of us Sunni Shia, and leave it in history and seal it up, finish, it's gone. Tilka ummatun kad khalat, it's gone. Leave it now. You start afresh. Then you have the will of the Prophet. Now this is Sunni Shia traditions. The Prophet was there and he said, bring me a paper and pen, I will write you something after which you will never be misguided. So now there is history to this. You have hadith within the Sunni literature that they also accept that I will leave behind two weighty things, the book of God and my itra. The other version is the book of God and my sunnah. And the Sunnis say, our Sunni brothers say that the sunnah one is not authentic. The itra one is more weighty. So there is a background to this. I will write something for you after which you will never be misguided. This is the same wording as we have in that hadith. Of course, there's much more that I need to discuss tomorrow and day after. So here, according to the reports from the Ahlul Sunnah, Khalifa Umar said, Hasbuna Kitabullah. The book of God is enough for us. And there was a bit of a tussle and a bit of an argument. The Prophet said, it does not befit you people to fight in front of a messenger of God and to raise your voices over my voice. The Quran is saying, do not raise your voice over the voice of the messenger of God, lest all your good deeds diminish. So here now we have this type of an interpretation, that it was actually the Ahlul Bayt who did not want to give him the pen and paper, because they thought that he might write something that the Khilafah will go away from them. Why would they think that way when they've already got the preceding event of Ghadir in their favor? Can you see that? Why would the Ahlul Bayt want that anyway? And Imam Ali has always given whatever the Prophet wants, he's always complied with it. In any case, Umar said, the Prophet is talking out of sickness, he's becoming delirious. Through delirium he's speaking. And it's an audacious thing to say. The Sunni brothers need to accept this. This was not right. It was wrong. Accept it, let us seal it and move forward. Saqifa. The Prophet breathes his last. There's an outhouse on the outskirts of Medina. The Aus and Khazraj, the two tribes of Medina who had migrated there 500 years previous to the coming of the Prophet. And the Bani Qurayza Jews were already there. Now Aus and Khazraj were always contending for power. The Prophet came to Medina and made peace between them and reconciled between them, and they gave the authority to the Prophet. Aus and Khazraj were there contending amongst themselves as to who should be the Khalifa. Now, the reason for this is that there were people waiting on the outskirts of Medina to take advantage of the sensitivity of the death of the Prophet and the non-election and appointment of a Khalifa, so that the Muslims are weakened and other tribes can come and take authority. Obviously they were Muslims, but they were not all very sympathetic to the cause in that way. So they said, we have to decide this issue very quickly. Khalifa Abu Bakr and Khalifa Umar, they weren't Khalifa at that time. They found out that Aus and Khazraj have gathered in Saqifa, so they went there. So the first thing the Shias need to dispel from their mind is Abu Bakr and Umar did not conceive of Khalifa. They did not, of Saqifa, they did not set up Saqifa. Saqifa was already happening. Can you see that? Now when they went there and there was this tussle and all that, one thing did happen. The Ansar, when the Muhajirin said that the Khilafah which should be with us, the Ansar did say, if Ali stands for Khilafah, we will give it to him because he was the favored one of the Prophet. Imam Ali was busy with the funeral rites of the Prophet. Now you can see that the Sahaba did not pay the Prophet his last respects. They should have. That should have been their priority. It was something wrong that they did. It was very, very wrong. Accept it, move on. In any case, when the Khilafah was given to Abu Bakr because of the infighting in Saqifa, people did not do his bay'ah. There was a fight, there was a punch-up, and people were called in the Masjid al-Nabi and people were forced to give bay'ah to Khalifa Abu Bakr. These are the things that have happened there, yes? Accept and move on. Fadak. Obviously, the Prophet was given a land, and the Quran bears witness to this, that the lands gained without warfare or treading of horses, Allah can give to His Messenger. And then again, the same portions that were given in the verse of Khums are given here. A portion for the Prophet, for the Dhul Qurba, and Allah and the Prophet and the Dhul Qurba, Yatam, Masakin, Wabn Sabil. 6 portions. So now when Bibi Fatima went to claim this right, Khalifa Abu Bakr said, the Prophet has said, Nahnu ma'ashir al-anbiya la narith wa la nurath. We, the prophets, we do not inherit and we do not give an inheritance. Now, our Sunni brothers say, well, this is exactly what the Prophet must have said. And Khalifa Abu Bakr is acting in accordance with the Sunnah of the Prophet. Got it so far? Khalifa Uthman comes, takes Fadak away from the Muslims and gives it to Marwan, his son-in-law. So now, if the Khalifa, first one, was acting in accordance with the Sunnah of the Prophet, then why doesn't the third one understand the Sunnah of the Prophet? Are you seeing this? Look at the inconsistencies here. And then, if Khalifa Abu Bakr is the best one out of all of them, then that means the Khalifa third one has gone against the best one. Are you seeing this? Look at the anomalies. Look at the mess that is there. Then Muawiyah comes, takes it from Marwan and splits it into 3. He gives one portion to Marwan, one portion to Yazid, and one portion to the son of Khalifa Uthman. So now Muawiyah has done contrary to Uthman. Then the Khalifas of Bani Umayyah after them, who come, who is Marwan, he takes it all for himself again. Finally, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz comes, the very righteous Khalifa amongst the Umayyi, and he asks the ulama to gather and to debate the issue of Fadak. The ulama decide that Abu Bakr was wrong. It belongs to Bibi Fatima, and they gave it back to the Hashimis. It was a full-scale mess that they made of Fadak. Fine, accept it. Accept it and let it rest, and let's move on. Don't make theologies, don't make excuses, don't make justifications. Both of us have problems. Let us both acknowledge our problems and move on. Something is very bitter about history here. There's a hadith in Bukhari, and I want to set this a prelude before we go into the last thing here. That Khalifa Abu Bakr and Khalifa Umar wanted to see Bibi Fatima, she refused to meet with them. This is in Bukhari. Imam Ali goes and tells Bibi Fatima, meet with them. She says, fine. She meets with them, but she turns her face away from them. They say, oh Fatima, you know we love no one more than your father. And after your father, we love no one more than we love you. We love you more than our own daughters. They were coming for seeking forgiveness. The lady said, I will pray against you and I will complain to my father on the day of Qiyamah against you too. Now, I do not want to be in a position where Bibi Fatima complains to her father and then somebody has to stand in front of her father and Allah and be answerable. God forbid anybody be in that position. This is a huge problem. We need to acknowledge. We need to acknowledge. Not taking anything away from any goodness that anybody might have done. But this definitely is a problem. It needs to be acknowledged. That Bibi Fatima was grieved. Her heart was broken. She wasn't pleased with them too. Even though Imam Ali cooperated with them and all the rest. She wasn't. And that is one thing that stands out in history. And it is not nice. We need to acknowledge this and move on. But there comes another incident. Now this is very sensitive for both sides. The incident of the door of Bibi Fatima. This is full of anomalies. And we just can't make sense of this. The incident, according to the Shia, is that there was a threat to burn the door of Bibi Fatima. Why? Because Imam Ali and some of the renowned Sahaba of the Prophet were gathered inside there, conspiring against the newly made Khilafah. Yeah? So immediately, as Khilafah is being established, There are people gathered inside the house of Bibi Fatima talking about how to undermine the yet to be stabilized Khilafah. In order to take swift action, Khalifa Umar goes with his servant and he says, I will burn the house down. This is what we find in Riwayah. They said, the daughter of the Prophet is in there. He said, so what? Fine. Now here is where there is a change in the true versions. The Sunni version is that Umar was told, you actually threatened. He said, yes, but I didn't do it. I didn't carry out my threat. He said, I threatened, but I didn't carry out my threat. The Shia version is, they carried out the threat. They burnt the house, they burnt the door was pushed. Bibi was squashed between the door and the wall, or there might have been a protruding nail that went inside her body. Her ribs broke, she miscarried her child. In addition, what the orators narrate, and we find in books, she was slapped, and the whip that Khalifa Umar was so infamously popular for descended upon her. Now imagine if somebody says that about the Bibi, you're not going to be able to contain it. Now you will hate that person, and for sure there is nothing but hatred that comes, you can't deny. More than the hatred for the killer of Imam Hussein. You know that because this is the Bibi, the grand woman. Now, this is where the two narrations differ. Now we ask, who has narrated it? Imam Ali, Bibi Fatima, Al-Hassan, Al-Hussein, who? No, none of them. Bibi Fatima goes to claim her right in Fadak. According to what we read, she does not spare any words. She says everything. She does not talk about her miscarriage, her burning of the door, her ill treatment. Why? That doesn't make sense to anyone. Imam Ali never talks about it. Al-Hassan never talks about it. Al-Hussein never talks about it. Put them aside. Zubair is supposed to be one of them. He never talks about it. The close Sahaba of Imam Ali, Salman never talks about it, Bilal never talks about it, Abu Dharr never talks about it. Why are they all silent? They have never spared any opportunity to talk openly and freely. Why are they silent here? We say, well, there is a hadith in Kitab Sulaim bin Qais, and it was written by the Sahabi of Imam Ali. Fine. Al-Khoei and Sayyid Sistani find faults with the reporting of this book. So by this traditional standards, the chains cannot be assumed to be strong enough. I said we are going to take a rational approach in order to establish historicity of events when there is discrepancy. Fine. None of them are reporting. As Sayyid Fadlullah pointed out, well, what happened to Imam Ali? Why didn't he defend the daughter of the Prophet? Then again, the Sunnis point out that doesn't that weaken Imam Ali? Sher-e-Khuda, the lion of God, he can't even defend his own wife. And if you look at the Sims video, the Sunnis are very open and they're very honest. They're saying if Umar has done this, we will curse him as well. But he did not do it, it's not proven. They said if he has done this, we hate him as well. Let us go forward. There are all these anomalies. Why isn't anybody so? Is it a minor event? It's a huge event. So then we got a hadith from Khalifa Abu Bakr, in which he's, at the end of his life, is regretting his previous actions, in which he says, Ya laytani lam akshuf an bayt Fatima. If only I had not exposed the house of Fatima. Now this is a very later riwayah. It's not from anybody associated at that time. It's a very late riwayah, reported much after in books. So we'll say, I always asked my Shia colleagues, what do you understand from this? They say, well, it says that they actually went and broke the door down. I said, wait a minute. It actually means I wish I had not exposed what was going on inside the house, of the conspiracy against me as I presumed it, of the Khilafah. But if you were to be adamant and say this means the breaking of the house, breaking of the door, then Abu Bakr is saying, I wish I had not unveiled the house of Fatima. This then lends support to what Sayyid Fadlullah said, that back in the day there were no doors, there used to be curtains. And therefore no door has been burnt and no door has been broken on Bibi Fatima, and Bibi Fatima did not get injured. So either admit that there was a curtain and no door. You can't have both. You can't say that the curtain hadith I can fit on the door. Either admit it was a curtain and therefore there was no door, or admit that the hadith means I wish I had not exposed what was going on inside the house of Lady Fatima. So here I will ask my Shia brothers that please exercise caution. This one incident tops everything. It is far worse than Karbala. On the back of it, we have 2 ashras in which the orators talk about this event. Allah is saying in the Quran, Inna dhann la yughni min al-haqqi shay'a. Conjecture does not avail in the least from the truth. The fine young scholar who presented for us the Babul Fatima in Sims, have a look at it. He's an intellectual historian. He says clearly that academically we cannot prove that this happened. Academically we can't prove that this has happened. And in addition, if our Grand Maharajas are saying they're saying that there is weakness in the reports of that single source that comes from there, then why commit ourselves to something that is going to tear the Muslims apart? Nothing causes more hatred and bitterness than this event. Exercise caution. Now think about this. The Shia Tabari in Dalailul Imama quotes a hadith. And I don't want to overdo this, by the way, but I do feel it's in place to narrate this. That you have an incident that has been just pinned somewhere in history, and then we get cultures developing from it. He has this hadith in Dalail al-Imama, 5th century scholar, that the 12th Imam will come and he will exhume the bodies of Khalifa Abu Bakr and Khalifa Umar and talk with them, and they will respond to him. Then he will burn them with the same wood that was assembled to burn the door of Bibi Fatima. The 5th Imam is saying, we have inherited that wood and we have kept it with us. Now imagine, from where to where? An incident that cannot be proven, on the back of it, ceremonies, rituals on the back of it, hadith on the back of it, resurrection on the back of it, crucifixion on the back of it, burning on the back of it, the same wood is still intact. Before you know it, the whole religion is gone. The Quran says, Tilka ummatun qad khalat laha ma kasabat wa lakum ma kasabtum. Those people, they have gone. They will stand before God. You will have your own standing before God. You will not be asked for what they did. Nobody will be asked for what you did. That's the first thing. The Quran is saying, if you must open history, then open it up and clarify it. Whatever is factual, admit to it. Whatever that cannot be established, refrain from it. These are the 2 yardsticks the Quran has given. Do not be distracted by this and that. Fulfill your human purpose. Now we come to the story of the great Imam Hussein. Look at him. With him, I believe, are people who don't understand the meaning of imamat. With him are people who believe in the khilafah. With him are people who don't understand Islam. The godly soul of Hussein is focused on God. He is focused on establishment of justice. He is focused on exposing tyrant and uprooting this tyrannical trend from within Islam. He is focused on guiding the minds aright, even at the expense of his blood and the blood of his children. And that is why he became that great pull for the free souls to come towards him. On the night of Ashura, he was supplicating in a way that so many people within the enemy camp defected. They said, an outlaw, an unrighteous person cannot supplicate like him. Hur heard his supplications. He went to Umar ibn Saad or somebody else and he said, will the battle indeed take place? He said, indeed, within no time shall their arms fall and their heads roll, and our horses shall trample them beneath their hooves. Hur trembled. He heard the cry of Hussein, is there a helper who will respond to my cry and come and assist the family of the messenger? When he heard this, he trembled. He started to make way towards Hussein. His son Ali, his servant, and maybe his brother, they joined him. Somebody from the enemy camp looked at Hur. He said, "Oh Hur, are you going to mount a surprise attack upon Hussein?" Hur trembled. He said, "By Allah, if I were to be asked, who amongst the Kufans is the most gallant and fearless, I would have said you. But your color has changed and you tremble like a leaf. Hur, these are hungry people, soldiers. They don't have the strength to carry the sword. We will kill them in no time." Hur said, "By Allah, I see myself between heaven and hell, and I will never prefer hell over heaven." He goes to Hussein. He says, "Hussein, do you have forgiveness in your heart for me?" He says, "Not only I, but my God has forgiven you, O brother." He says, "Hussein, allow me to engage with your enemies. Allow me not to descend from my steed." Hussein said, "So be it." He said, "But first, allow me," as the popular narration says, "to go to the daughters of Fatima and seek forgiveness from them." He stands outside the tent and cries out, "O children and daughters of Fatima, before you comes the criminal who has brought you to this land. Had I not audaciously grabbed the reins of Hussein's steed, you would have not been here today surrounded by enemy. Do you have forgiveness in your heart for me?" As they heard his pleas, their cries filled the air. Fizza ran to Hur. She said, "Enough, O Hur, O righteous servant of God. The daughters of Fatima ask you to take rest." He said, "If only my arms would have been cut, if only my tongue would have been paralyzed." They commended him. Hur comes with his son, Ali. Ali fights gallantly. He comes back to his father. He says, "Oh father, the thirst kills me." He said, "Oh child, but the grandson of the Prophet is thirsty. Go and give your life." His son goes, fights a gallant battle and falls. Instead of going to him broken-hearted, Hur, with utmost pride upon his steed, looks around radiating, "Did you see how my child fought?" He comes to the body of his son. He says, "Oh child, you have made me a proud father. May Allah and His Messenger accept your sacrifice." Hur fights with the enemies of Hussein. He is struck upon his blessed head. He falls to the ground. He says, "Oh Aba Abdullah, come to my aid." Hussein rushes to Hur, takes his head and places it into his lap. Habib is with Hussein. Hur is breathing his last. Hur breaks into a smile. Habib says, "Oh Hur, do you see his grandfather receiving you and quenching your thirst with the goblets of Kauthar?" He said, "No, Habib, I do not see such a thing." Habib says, "Oh Hur, then why do you smile?" He says, "Oh Habib, because I find my head in his lap." Matam Hussein.
یا حسین یا حسین یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، تمہارا دوست ہے تنہا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، شہید کیسے ہوا ہو بتاؤ گے آ کر، تم حال مسلم بے کس سناؤ گے آ کر، رقیہ تک کی ہے راستہ حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، لگاؤ اس سے بھی اندازے میری غربت کے، جہاں پہ ابن علی لکھنا تھا وہاں میں نے دیا ہے ماں کا والا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، بتا رہا تھا اسے کوئی بھی نہیں ہے میرا، تو بولی ثانی زہرا حبیب آئے گا، ہے اس کو تم پہ بھروسہ حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، وہ جب یہ سنتی ہے کوفے سے آ رہے ہیں شقی، تو پوچھتی ہے ہمارا بھی آئے گا کوئی، دعائیں دے گی سکینہ حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، گوارا کر نہیں سکتی حسین کی غیرت، تمہاری زوجہ کی چادر کو لوٹ لے امت، تم اس کو چھوڑ کے کوفہ حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، گر بطول دوبارہ جلایا جائے گا، تمہارے دوست پہ خنجر چلایا جائے گا، نہیں ہے وقت زیادہ حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، یہ خط میں شاہ نے لکھا حبیب آ جاؤ، چمک चमकते चांद की हमको भी दीद हो जाए। तुम आओ तो मेरे बच्चों में ईद हो जाए। बहुत उदास है कुंबा हबीब आ जाओ। ये खत में शाह ने लिखा हबीब आ जाओ। ये खत में शाह ने लिखा हबीब आ जाओ। ये खत नहीं इसे बहनों की आरज़ू समझो। हमारे लफ्ज़ों को ज़ैनब की गुफ्तगू समझो। बहन ये कहती है भैया हबीब आ जाओ। ये खत में शाह ने लिखा हबीब आ जाओ। ये खत में शाह ने लिखा हबीब आ जाओ। तुम्हारा दोस्त है तन्हा हबीब आ जाओ। ये खत में शाह ने लिखा हबीब आ जाओ। ये खत में शाह ने लिखा हबीब आ जाओ। या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन।
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, we'll continue our program after Salatul Maghribain. Time for Adhan now.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك، لا إله إلا أنت، أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إنه ليس لي علم بموضع رزقي، وإنما أطلبه بخطرات تخطر على قلبي، فأجول في طلبه البلدان، فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران، لا أدري أفي سهل هو أم في جبل، أم في أرض أم في سماء، أم في بر أم في بحر، وعلى يدي من ومن قبلي من، وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك، وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك. اللهم فصل على محمد وآله، واجعل يا ربي رزقك لي واسعا، ومطلبه سهلا، ومأخذه قريبا، ولا تعنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا، فإنك غني عن عذابي، وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك. فصل على محمد وآله، وجد على عبدك بفضلك، إنك ذو فضل عظيم. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل Muhammad. Sisters and brothers, we will now continue with the recitation of the Dua Komel, tonight being Thursday night. From Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء، وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء، وخضع لها كل شيء، وذل لها كل شيء، وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء، وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء، وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء، وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء، وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء، وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء، وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء، اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها، اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك، وأسألك بجودك وكرمك أن تدنيني من قربك، وأن توزعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع، أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا، وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته، وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك، ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا، ولا لشيء من عمل القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته، وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلته، وكم من عثار وقيته، وكم من مكروه دفعته، وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي، وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي، وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي، وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها ومطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي، ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في الأحوال كلها رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك، أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك، وخالفت بعض أوامرك، فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك، وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا، مستغفرا منيبا، مقرا مذعنا معترفا، لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني، ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري، وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي، يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي. هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي، أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك، ولهج بي لساني من ذكرك، واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت، أو تبعد من أدنيت، أو تشرد من آويت، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا، وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما هكذا الظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم. يا رب وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه، قليل مكثوه، يسير بقاؤه، قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه، ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها أضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته. فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك، وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك، وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وهبني صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين. يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفتك، وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيتك، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه؟ أم كيف يتغلغل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربا؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كانت لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما. لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأنت جل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما. أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير تنزله أو إحسان تفضله أو بر تنشره أو رزق تبسطه أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره يا رب يا رب يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا رب يا رب يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي، يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، قو على خدمتك جوارحي، واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي، وهب لي الجد في خشيتك، والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في المبادرين، وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد، ومن كادني فكيد، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك. وجد لي بجودك، واعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك ليجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقل لي عثرتي، واغفر لي زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني مناي، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء، يا من اسمه دواء، وذكره شفاء، وطاعته غنى. ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء، وسلاحه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم، يا دافع النقام، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل بي ما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله، وسلم تسليما كثيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين، إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين، اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Brothers and sisters, let us remember all those people in difficult situations around the world, those in hospitals, at home recovering, people who are in economic hardship, separate from their loved ones, people stuck in refugee camps, imprisoned unjustly. May Allah bring them relief. Let us all together pray.
أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء.
السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث علي أمير المؤمنين ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلت ولعن الله أمة ظلمت ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سيل وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. زيارة علي بن الحسين عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلت، ولعن الله أمة ظلمت، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. زيارة الشهداء سلام الله عليهم. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباءه. السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وأوداءه. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الزكي الناصح. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله. بأبي أنتم وأمي طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم، وفزتم فوزا عظيما. فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. زيارة العباس سلام الله عليه. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوصيين. السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوطهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك، فنعم الأخ المواسي. فلعن الله أمة قتلت، ولعن الله أمة ظلمت، ولعن الله.
عجل على ظهورك، عجل على ظهورك، عجل على ظهورك. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sisters and brothers, this brings us to the end of our program this evening. Thank you all for joining. Once again, a reminder that if you have any questions, comments, feedback, please send us your message via our website or our email address, and we'll be sure to follow up on it. Also, we look forward to your participation tomorrow as we continue this theme of lectures. And there are already two themes we are following. One is the history of Shias in America, and the other is Islam and God centricity. How can we get the guidance from the Quran? So with this I say Khuda Hafiz, fi amanillah, and see you inshallah tomorrow. Khuda Hafiz.
نسألك يا من هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الرحمن الرحيم الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر الخالق البارئ المصور الغفار القهار الوهاب الرزاق الفتاح العليم القابض الباسط الخافض الرافع المعز المذل السميع البصير الحكم العليم اللطيف الخبير العليم العظيم الغفور الشكور العلي الكبير الحفيظ المقيم الحسيب الجليل الكريم الرقيب المجيب الواسع الحكيم الودود المجيد الباعث الشهيد الحق الوكيل القوي المتين الولي الحميد المحسن المبدع المعيد المحيي المميت الحي القيوم الواجد الماجد الواحد الصمد القادر المقتدر المقدم المؤخر الأول الآخر الظاهر الباطن الوالي المتعالي البار التواب المنتكم العفو الرؤوف مالك الملك ذو الجلال والإكرام المقسط الجامع الغني المغني المانع الضار النافع النور الهادي البديع الباقي الوارث الرشيد الصبور الذي ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير اللهم صل أفضل الصلاة على أسعد المخلوقات كسيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم عدد معلوماتك ومداد كلماتك كلما